Hello and welcome to the Healed Approach podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Heald, and in this series, in partnership with the Facade Collective, we are going to be focusing on the phenomenal women in construction, highlighting their pivotal roles in an industry where they lead with resilience and innovation. This is a celebration of their achievements and a call to action for true equity in traditionally male-dominated fields. Join us as we uncover the stories of these inspiring women, the challenges they've overcome and the transformative impact they're making. With every story shared, we're constructing a future where everyone has the foundation to build their dreams. Let's embark on this revolutionary journey together. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Healed Approach podcast. And today I'm joined by Melissa Fazackerley. Did I pronounce it okay, Melissa?
Yes.
I want to, massive shout out to Melissa as well, because we've had to reschedule this podcast because the first one I didn't turn up to because there was an issue with my scheduling calendar. So thank you so much for your patience. I was gutted at the time. I was like, oh, that's so unprofessional of me. And you put time aside. So I'm super, super grateful that you have come, to join me again and have this chat today. But first, let me tell you more about Melissa. So Melissa is an experienced risk management specialist with over 20 years experience in the construction industry. After many years working in-house, she decided to set up Dimension Health Safety Ltd, a business dedicated to guiding construction companies in health, safety, environmental and quality management, guided by the ISO 9001, 14001 and 45001 management system standards. I hear all about these standards, but hopefully you'll explain a little bit more about them. Her area of focus for the future is leadership coaching around behavioural safety for the C-suite and senior managers. She is the creator of Under Construction, the Swearing Journal, a journal with a twist that was developed as a result of her experience in the industry. Sometimes only a swear word will do to round up the day. Know that feeling. She has also founded the Safety Social, which is a Northwest-based networking group for health and safety professionals and everyone around them to get together as part of this awareness. So, Melissa, tell us what it is that you do, you know, what you're really doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yes. So my current main focus is the ISO standards. Yeah. So as you mentioned there, we've got 9001, which is quality management systems. 14001 is environmental management systems. 45001 is occupational health and safety management systems. So the idea behind it is that me and my clients get to build an effective management system around one, two, or all three of those standards that helps them manage the risk in their organisation. And the main goal is always improvement.
Yeah.
So that's the day-to-day building of that, managing that, running that, training around that kind of thing, as well as day-to-day trusted advisor for health and safety, really.
Interesting. I've done a recent survey. It's out there at the moment, actually. Anybody who's listening who wants to complete my survey, I've actually asked male leaders in construction, so I'm really interested in their perspective. I'm really interested in their perspective. And I think one of the things already that's coming out is, because I am asking them about obviously the things that they struggle with or they need to see improved. And there is this gap when it comes to safety and, knowing what to do and how to do it. And so, what kind of organisations in the industry are you working with?
So my, the last probably over a decade now, I've focused on, my role has been within facades companies.
Oh, interesting.
So the roofing, cladding, all that kind of stuff. But previously, as you mentioned, over 20 years in construction. So I've worked with house builders, small contractors, main contractors in contracting, subcontractors. I've kind of done it all. But yeah, my main kind of client is probably still SME kind of size, probably up to around 50 million turnover. So they've got a solid structure of the C-suite, middle management, they've got operational staff, they've got management staff. something like kind of really meaty to go at when it comes to the management system, and having difficult conversations really. And I think the survey, I've not seen your survey, but with you saying what's coming out of that in terms of the gaps in health and safety, I think from my perspective and what I see, that's quite common as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because people have their strengths, and this is why they're in the position they're in. But it does depend on what kind of person you get in to support you in different areas as well.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I shared it today on LinkedIn. So I know obviously that won't be today when this goes out, but if you want to go and share it, Melissa, go ahead.
I will.
If there's anybody in your network that wants to give me some feedback, that would be great. But yeah, I think you've touched on something there. I totally get what you mean about wanting to work with, businesses where you can get your teeth stuck in. I get that. But you've mentioned there, a lot of it relies on the person who you've got in, on who you bring in. And I think for me, I guess why I'm trying to delve into it a little bit as well is because I think you can't see, if you don't have diversity, right, within your organisation, within your executive team, and diversity also means bringing outside people in. You're not going to be able to see those blind spots, and that's super important when it comes to safety, right? Because we are in the construction industry, literally, we're playing with people's lives. So I think part of I massively do believe that part of what I'm doing feeds into that health and safety aspect, and I'm a massive believer as well that you need external people to come in and look at that. Whether you've got your own internal health and safety team or not, it's good practice to have that 360, to have that outside view, to have somebody else with different experiences and different backgrounds to be able to advise you. Do you think, well, I'm sure you believe that too.
Yeah, I absolutely believe it as well. And a lot of my clients do as well. So they do have in-house safety support.
Yeah.
So I compliment them.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's just bringing a new perspective, having those conversations, maybe challenging why things are the way they are.
Yes.
I did a post this morning, actually. I had a really interesting conversation yesterday about emotional intelligence and coaching. And part of that is about understanding why people behave the way they do.
Yeah.
So it's not just about black and white compliance. It's not just about ticking that box. It's not just about getting that certificate. It's about building the culture behind it to make it work.
Exactly. And how far do you go into that with the people that you're working with?
So I've got a few clients at the minute who I'm basically an extension to the team.
Yeah.
Now, to the point where it's safety isn't a siloed thing. It isn't siloed anymore. So every time maybe there's a new procedure when it comes to a commercial aspect, and it's kind of like, hold on, we need this conversation. We need to understand how this fits in. How does this affect other areas? So I've kind of got a mix of being the joy of being part of a team and being part of that structure, which also comes with its challenges as well. But then I've also got the perspective from somebody outside looking in.
Yeah.
And because it's the access to the C-suite that's important, you can sit and look at a risk and opportunity register at that senior level, but then you can also sit and look at a risk and opportunity at an operational level, and I'm sure you've found yourself that you get totally different approaches to different areas. So like your safety risk operationally, usually you guys will kind of relate it back to the site, which is brilliant, but then your C-suite are looking more at, okay, where are we headed next? What does this look like? So it's beyond the day-to-day, and it's that strategy around how do we make this work.
And I think, what you said there, like you've almost like an external member of the team, and I think that's super important. And this is something that I always, because the clients that I attend, my best clients, the clients that I get the best results with are exactly the same, because I always say to people, you can't get somebody like yourself, somebody like me in on a one-off, on a, it's got to be, because how can you challenge, advise, guide, if you're not really, aware of the challenges and what's going on within the business. And the only way that you can do that is to have that chance to be able to really integrate within the team, but also you've got that distance. And one thing I really find powerful as well, in terms of being, part of the team, but also kind of not, if that makes sense. You've got the benefit of not having that fear that if you say something, you're going to kind of, I don't know, be brought up against, you're not going to have a fear, I guess, of challenging things, because you're not going to think, well, I'm going to lose my job, because at the end of the day, you're there and, and you're there to challenge and do those things. So you can push forward on stuff, is what I'm trying to say, that potentially somebody that is employed by the organisation might not be able or might not feel safe enough to do.
Yes, exactly.
And I say this, and I have this conversation a lot with leaders who say, but I know that my team feels safe. I know my team can come to me about anything. And whilst you can create super safe, psychologically safe, a sense of belonging in your organisation, I think it's a little bit short-sighted to think that your team are going to come to you with anything. And what I mean by this is we're conditioned, right? So it's the legacy of the education system, of the way that we're brought up. Okay, there is always going to be. I mean, as much as I'm trying to kind of change the way that we're working within construction, I'm trying to kind of break down those barriers, kind of squash some of those hierarchies. You're going to come into an organisation with the idea that your boss, you've always got to keep a little bit back, and I'm not saying that's necessarily always a bad thing, but, I think no matter how safe the cultures that you create, we come in with that idea because of the way that society is set up. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's kind of, if I've articulated that as well as I wanted to, but do you see where I'm going with that?
Absolutely. I do see where you're going with that. And I think an extension to that is putting your money where your mouth is. Not literally. It's not always about spending money. But it's about, if you get a concern, if you get a suggestion from an employee, if you get a bit of feedback that's maybe not what you expected and it's a surprise, look into it. Be curious, ask some questions, look at, all right, okay, well, we obviously need to change this. So fine, let's get this done. Not a problem. So an example, I was with a client earlier this week and we were trying to expand some competencies around delivering toolbox talks. So we wanted to get the supervisors in. This is why we do them. This is what they look like. It's not a case of, as is always happening in construction, look at that, sign that before you go on to site. So we had the guys in and you could see when they came into the room, they were kind of like, oh, how long are we going to be in here? But then by the end of it, they'd all delivered a toolbox talk. They'd all put their own spin on it. They'd all made it relevant to the company. And then whilst they were looking at this, they'd come up with about 10 suggestions between them. Well, actually, if we have this refueling station, we don't actually have no smoking signage on there. We should have no smoking signage on there. And it's like, actually, it's such a small thing, but it is massively important to take action on that, because if you don't take action on that, why would they bother speaking up about something else?
Yeah. Love that. Absolutely love that. This is again about trust. It's about, getting your team's trust. It's about, this is how we ensure that our teams feel valued, feel heard. It's how we get the best out of them. And I see it all too often, and it infuriates me, where organisations will do surveys, and the feedback might not be what they were expecting, and so they just ignore it. They just listen to the things that they wanted to hear, and they'll change the things that they thought that they we're going to have to change. And it does. And I hear it so much with them, from employees as well, is that I've had these great ideas, but no one's listened to me. Now, there's nothing more demotivating for your team than that. And the thing I wanted to kind of say as well is that, when you're looking at health and safety, that psychological safety, that sense of belonging is so important within that, because you're going to get, if people feel, safe, happy at work, psychologically, cognitively, then they're going to be more vigilant. They're going to make sure that they're doing things appropriately and in line with what it is that you're trying to achieve. So yes, that obviously I'm talking to the converted when it comes to that, but I think sometimes it just gets forgotten.
It does, and it is the small things, and I think it takes, because, and I understand from a senior leadership point of view, because there is so much going on, and there is so much that you're wanting to improve and you're trying to improve, and there's so much being put in place, and there's almost a sense of, well, is nobody grateful for what we're doing so far? And then you start getting an us and them divide. But the reality is, like you've just said, if you've got senior management who are going off on a tangent because they think they're doing what's right, but you've got employees actually saying, no, that's all wonderful, but we're missing these small vital parts that you just keep ignoring.
Yeah.
And it's hard as an individual, because it's a vulnerability as well to actually sit back and go, actually, yeah, I got that wrong.
Yeah. But why are we so afraid of vulnerability?
See, part of the conversation I had yesterday was construction is so competitive. It is so fast paced. It is demanding. And I think there is still, maybe not as much as there has been in previous years, but I think there is still the bravado that goes on. That, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. This is just who I am. Get on with it. I'm not interested. I've got better things to deal with. When the reality is that person probably does care, but they haven't been able to give themselves that space to act on that care. So there's a bit of internal conflict going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you say that it's still going on. Like, have you seen, in the 20 years that you've been in the industry, have you seen that shift or change or improve at all?
Massively.
Okay.
Massively. So when I first started in construction, looking back, it was a terrible place. As much as it was great, everybody gets on and everybody meets in the pub on a Friday. Obviously, that's a whole separate conversation about well-being and alcohol and all that stuff. But
yeah,
as much as that was, the workplace was absolutely like, it was okay to scream and shout at people. It was okay to jump up and down in somebody's face. It was okay, accepted to just sack somebody on the spot. There was a lot that was tolerated, potentially embraced, because it benefited the fast pace and the demands of the industry.
Yeah.
But I think now, I think some of that does still go under the radar, absolutely. But I think there are changes, but it's difficult to make those changes because the demand is still there, the tight timeframes are still there, the changes in programme are there, budgets are still there. So it's hard to make those changes, but it is happening over time. And I think progress is, you're never going to get to perfection, but progress is key.
Absolutely. There's no such thing as perfect, is there?
No.
I think when it comes to, what do you think then has contributed to that progress? What do you think has shifted the dial?
That's a tough one.
Sorry.
I think it's attitudes, to be honest. I think back in 2008, obviously that was a terrible time for construction. A lot of people left the industry because that people needed to find work for a start. It was a recession. We needed money coming in and whatever we were doing. And I think a lot of people that I know got out of the industry and are quite happy in slower paced jobs, in jobs that pay the money, in jobs that allow them time with the family. There's much less sacrifice that comes with construction. And I think some other criteria that might be put on people. So when you're looking at tenders, for example, and there's a requirement to use local labour, local suppliers and things like that, maybe travel time has come down, which has had less of an impact on personal life. I think there could be loads of reasons, to be honest, but I also think awareness of well-being and awareness of actually how we treat other people. Like, it's not okay for managers to treat people in the way that they used to 20 odd years ago, just because they were a manager and because, well, you're not doing what I tell you. No, but it's now it's more of a two-way conversation. Like
Well,
I say, it's not 100% there.
leadership has changed though, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think across the board, not just in construction. I think when you, and I do think part of this is down to more women entering the workforce, because I think when you look 20, 30, 40 years ago, leadership was much more dictatorial, I guess. There was more micromanagement. There was more, this is the way you're going to do it, and and you're going to conform. And whereas I think times have changed. Like I said, we've got more women in the workforce. We're realizing that we're not necessarily going to get the best out of people by operating in that way. The world has changed, and I think that I just think there is more expectation from leaders to be a little bit more empathetic, understanding, less. But again, no, I hear this still. I was talking to somebody yesterday in the industry who was telling me, he had a great leader for 20 odd years, was always had the flexibility to do what he wanted. It was brilliant, and now all of a sudden he's got someone who's literally down his neck and like really kind of micromanaging. Interestingly, it's a female as well, but I just think I do think the potentially that is something that has had an impact. But again, you'll know more than me. You've been in the industry a lot longer than me, so I don't know what you're.
No, I agree. I think the diversity in the industry is changing. I think people's awareness of themselves is changing. I think, like you touched on, society is changing. So generations ago, it was about you get a job and you get a steady job and you're in that job until you retire, and then you can retire. You pay your house off, you do this, you do that, whatever. And I think the generational change of people being more aware and the choices maybe that are available in the world's a lot smaller than it was. So we have a whole new perspective on what's out there, what that looks like. I think we're a bit more educated on certain matters. Like I went to Spain earlier this year and I got sat next to a bricklayer just by chatting, and we and then that was it. Then everything was construction, the whole 2-hour flight over there. But he was, I think he was I'm gonna say maybe 67, but he was saying I still have to work because I was never educated on a pension, so I didn't put money in a pension for that reason. So I'm knackered now. And I think there's probably more trade unions being recognised in construction as well, which probably has an impact. I do think there's an awful lot that's changed.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of mental health and well-being for men, because it's now something that's talked about a lot.
Is it improving in terms of, I don't know. It's a little bit like, I guess what I struggle with a little bit is, things have changed, things have moved on, which is great, but there is still the statistics, still say, there are still far, I don't know what the statistics are. I did know because I did a presentation on it, but it was a while ago now. But, how many men is it each day, commit suicide in the industry? Mental health is an issue, still massive issue. And we talk a lot, like I ended up sat next to somebody in the industry. He used to, what did he do? I think he fitted fire sprinklers. Anyway, and he said to me, oh, I explained a little bit about what I do. I bet they wish they'd never asked, I'm telling you. And because I got, I thought I'm going to give you a bit of an education here. But he was, well,
I get the occasional boo.
Yeah. I remember at the end of it, I said to him and there was 4 of them, and I said to him and his wife, I'm really sorry, you wish you never asked. No, your passion's just really obvious. Your boys are lucky to have you as a mum. And I'm like, they don't think so. Anyway, I think, but he was saying, I've seen that there were so many more women in the industry now and all. And I said, well, are there? Because actually, we've seen a bit of a dip again. And we are seeing, I think what tends to happen is we're seeing more, the reason we're not seeing a shift in the statistics, I think, is that we are seeing more women interested potentially in coming in, but they're not, they're getting to a certain level and then they're getting out because it's so difficult. So it's like, we're not retaining women in the industry, which is why people go, oh, there's more women in the industry. Maybe there are more that are aware that they can come into the industry, but we're not retaining them. And that's why we're not making a dent in those statistics. And I think, and again, I've said this before, and you may disagree with me. Anybody who's listening may disagree with me, but genuinely, I also believe that if we have more women, more diversity in the industry, it will have an impact on mental health. Because, men, I know, I did a video the other day actually on YouTube, I can't remember what the video was about, but somebody did comment and just said, look, the industry is so much worse for men. And I kind of just thought, I left it because I kind of thought, right, okay, I see, this is what I mean, is that we need to talk to each other. And this is how we're going to improve mental health. Because absolutely, like you say, there is this idea that you've got to put on a bravado, you've got to be macho. You can't, there's so much banter. And somebody else commented on something recently and said, oh yeah, but it's all a bit of banter and you've got to know your audience and all that. And I'm like, but do any of you, because men don't talk to each other like women do, do they? I'm generalizing, but from my experience, they don't talk like we do to each other, but they may talk to another woman. I've got a new client recently because he just needed that safe space and that female perspective to work through some of his, some of the things, some of the challenges. And I'm just saying that if we have more women, more diversity in the workshop, we'll naturally have that support, that mentoring, that coaching will just naturally be part of the culture.
Absolutely. And through my however long in the industry, I have been a point of contact for people to say, listen, I need a conversation. I'm really struggling. I can talk to you. Can we have a chat? And that, obviously, from my perspective, I'm really happy that people feel like they can do that. And it has made a difference to them. I think the statement that it's more difficult for men in the industry, well, if we're looking at percentage terms and if we're looking at numbers, then yeah, because there's more men in the industry. And I get that I'm not on the tools, so I don't have the concern of getting to a Sunday night not knowing where I'm going on Monday. So I appreciate that difference and that complexity and the problems and the issues that come with that. But at the same time, I don't think it diminishes anybody else's challenges.
No, and I think you're right. And I think my point with this was I was going to literally go back and be like, kind of, and I just thought I've left it, and I probably will go back and reply to somebody because I thought, I don't think that statement, was a helpful statement, but I do think it was also, interesting and an insight into the fact that obviously, men are also, have got challenges in the industry, and I think this is the point is that we've got challenges, but different challenges. Like what I was talking about in my video, men don't experience those challenges. Okay, they experience different challenges, but we all need to understand from each other. Men will never understand. They have got, at the end of the day, they've got privilege in the industry because they're not in the minority. They are the majority, and they don't. There are so many invisible barriers that they probably don't appreciate because sometimes we don't even appreciate them as women. I was talking about this yesterday to a young engineer brilliant girl. And I just, I said, I said, go away and kind of, I recommended a book to read. I said, just have a read of that. I said, because you need to know now some of the barriers you're going to face moving forward in your career. And I'm not just talking about just in construction. Even if you come, just as a woman in the workplace, you need to understand what you're going to face, because you're going to come into it coming from an education background. You've been through university, you've been through school where there was no inequality. You sat your exams. It didn't matter if you're a man or a girl, a man or a woman, a boy or a girl. You got a good grade if you worked hard. You come into the workplace, you're disadvantaged from the get-go, and we don't realise that. And I guess my point here is that I reflect back now on my 20 odd years in the workplace, and my 15 years in leadership. And if I'd have known now what I knew then, I wouldn't have constantly thought I needed to fix myself and that was a problem with me. I would have realised that these are, issues within the patriarchal structures that we've got in our organisations.
Do you know what? It's interesting you're saying this, because I read a book recently, and I'm not going to share the name of it or the title of it because I thought it was absolute nonsense in the end, but it was about imposter syndrome.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of each chapter was a kind of to-do list on how to change yourself to fit into that environment, because that's the only way you're going to get ahead. And I was like,
I need to know.
no, you can go in the bin. Like, this is never being recommended to anybody ever. Some points I understand. So if you're going to be in a boardroom, if you don't understand accounting, if you don't understand the numbers, get some help with that.
Yes.
Develop that skill.
Yes.
Don't change your appearance and the way you look and the way you sound. Obviously, northern accent now. I'm not, this doesn't change. To fit in with the perceived route that you want to go down. And I think that is something else that has changed as well. I think in the industry I love seeing when an apprentice sticks, because I think that's another issue that the industry's got. Apprentices don't stick.
Yeah.
And then we're getting skills shortage, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I love it when that technical knowledge goes up through the business. But I think sometimes organisations can be guilty of solely capitalising on that and not providing training and support for other skills that are relevant to, say, the management role that they go in. So you talk about, you absolutely know how to do that job technically, but you're upsetting everybody every time you open your mouth. So let's get some training. Let's get some development in. And I think if a bit more investment was made in terms of training for these skill sets, whether it's people, whether it's technical skill sets, like you said, for somebody coming in from an educational background, all of these things can be taught, they can be worked on, they can be progressed as part of somebody's career plan.
Somebody already being enough, by the way.
Yes.
This isn't about saying that we should all be striving to personally develop and grow and what have you, but we should never feel that we're broken and we need to fix ourselves.
No.
And that is something that I think has become really a bit toxic in the industry as well. There's a lot, and not just in construction. I think there is so much push on trying to fix women, on trying to, get women to be able to, negotiate better, to be able to lean in more, right? But for me, it's like, hang on a minute here, right? I have coached, and I am guilty of this in some respects, but I think we're learning and growing all the time, right? But I've coached women to go in and negotiate pay rises, and I've worked with men as well. Men will usually get the pay rises, women won't. So it's not about trying to. And the other thing as well is that women, like, I don't know about you, but I always felt like I had to do another course, some more training. Because I always felt like I needed to know more because I wasn't good enough just as I was. And the sacrifices that I made, the family sacrifices that I made, the personal sacrifices that I made to try and make myself better, it was just exhausting. And these are barriers that women face.
Yeah.
In a little bit of a tangent, sorry.
No, but I think it, and I think sometimes a lack of transparency in what's expected can make that field a bit more complex. And yesterday I was having the conversation about anonymised CVs. Literally just if you're looking for a certain skill set, take everything off apart from this skill set. Let's compare properly. And then if you get the candidate, whatever that candidate is, sat in front of you, then it is what it is. But I think you mentioned before about biases. I think there is still some kind of bias there. I think the construction industry can often be guilty of, oh, they haven't grown up in this industry, so what do they know?
Oh my God, yes. I get that all the time as well, because obviously I'm like, what I am talking about, I've lived and breathed for the last 20 years, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it in a different industry.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think it's super important, and this isn't about blame, this isn't about trying to, because there's no point in trying to say, right, this is your fault, or because I honestly believe you have got a minority of people who just, you know, don't want to change, don't want to see things differently, are going to be difficult. But the majority of people are good people who want to see change, who, you know, who want to do the right thing. But sometimes, you know, they are not aware of their own biases. They're not aware that I had a conversation about recruitment yesterday. It's really interesting because we were talking about anonymized CVs. I was talking to an organization about, you know, how they're approaching recruitment, how they're looking at their internal branding so that they attract the right people, how they are, you know, having diversity on the board when they're interviewing, etc. Because we will naturally, as humans, we will select people that we feel are like us, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily always the right thing to do, you know?
Yeah. I think it can come down to almost a sense of insecurity sometimes. I'm not saying this is every time, but sometimes there can be a sense of insecurity there in terms of this person is bringing something new, this person is challenging I don't know how many times you've heard the statement, well, we've always done it this way, nothing's ever gone wrong.
Most toxic statement ever, right? That is
so common.
It's scarily common, you know. But I always say that is the one phrase that is going to cost an organization more than they could ever imagine. And it is, you know, it literally is putting the blockers on innovation.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you say, it can cost an organisation. So when you're looking at the criteria, when we're coming to tenders, when you're looking at the expectations of clients now, when we're talking about green strategies, just to bring a different element into what we're talking about, if you aren't improving, you are being left behind, and then there's only going to be a limited market available for your business to operate in. And it is not a prosperous one.
Well, on that note, Melissa, thank you. I feel like we've covered so much in that podcast, but super valuable. Can you let people know where it is that they can find you?
Yes. So I know it's not the easiest name to search on for LinkedIn, but yeah, find me on LinkedIn. My website is www.dimensionhs.co.uk. Got a couple of blogs on there, some recommended leadership reads on there actually that might be useful. I am also part of the Women Talking Fire committee. So it's not just for women, it's women and allies who are supporting growth and diversity in the industry.
I want to push it. I really want to, because I think we need to. I think sometimes it's women in construction, women talking fire, men just go, oh, okay, that's not for me. It's like, yes, it is. Just because we're talking about women doesn't mean you shouldn't be involved.
Yes, just support the diversity that's happening.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's you can find more info on that at www.talkingfire.co.uk, I think. We've just had a brilliant event with Cheshire Fire.
Yes, Andrew.
Fabulous event.
I done a podcast and I messed up. It was supposed to go out before the event, and anyway, my scheduling system didn't work. Nothing. The universe is telling me, get yourself a VA.
Yes, invest.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, and I'm actually on one of the panels at UK Construction Week in Birmingham in October, so you can find me there.
Which one are you on?
Leadership. It's on the Wednesday, I think.
Oh, I'm there on the Tuesday.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm talking about gender equality.
Oh, nice. So yeah, I'm here, there, and everywhere really. Safety social as well. Just look on Eventbrite for that. So if there's anybody, not just for safety professionals, even if you're like a small business that's maybe looking for some safety support, come along and have a chat to people, meet people, get to know the right person to support the business.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, That's another important point as well. Relationships are so important. Being able to work with the right person. So, yeah, no, that's a great take home from that. Well, thank you. Thanks so much, Melissa. Thank you, for sharing your insights, talking about what you do. I know we could have talked so much more. But anybody who has been listening, please make sure that you do go check out everything that Melissa has just shared with you. I'll link it also in the show notes. Please make sure also that you leave us a 5-star review and that you do share this episode with your friends, your families, your colleagues, anybody that you think will find value, because I am terrible at marketing this podcast as well as I should. So I need you. So thank you so much again, Melissa, and everybody who's listening, and I'll see you here next time. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us in celebrating the trailblazing women in construction. Today's discussions have not only illuminated the remarkable contributions of our guests, but have also reinforced our commitment to fostering a workspace that honours diversity, champions equality and nurtures innovation. Through our collaborative efforts with the Facade Collective, we are reminded that every contribution in construction is a step towards a more inclusive and equitable industry. Let the stories of these courageous women inspire us all to continue building a future where gender is no longer a barrier to success, but a testament to our collective strength and diversity. Until next time, let's keep pushing boundaries, breaking barriers, and leading the charge towards a more equitable and inclusive world.